Mira timed her departure for the city's softest hour, that stretch before dawn when the trains breathe rather than cough, and the pigeons huddle like thoughts on the rim of the roof. She rolled her suitcase down 3 flights of stairs that had learned all her footsteps and said goodbye to nobody. The text thread with her team at the startup blinked with little blue pings she refused to open. Out of office, she had typed. Possibly for good. The draft sat in her send box like a cat that would not leave the hall. The rideshare arrived, a car that smelled of citrus and a year of strangers. The driver tried conversation and then let it go, a kindness Mira valued more than 5 stars. City blocks let go of her as if she were a burr that had finally been brushed out. Past the ring road, the sky loosened its belt. The radio turned to static. She didn't mind. There are kinds of quiet you earn by escaping. There are kinds that come to collect. By mid-morning, the farmhouse introduced itself with its big red door and a porch that had learned patience by holding generations of elbows and baskets. The fields beyond were a particular kind of unruffled, the kind you notice before you understand it. No wind, yet the grasses didn't sway. No birds, yet the scarecrow turned on its post as if tracking an argument only it could hear. The key was under the 3rd plank, exactly where Baba Vira's last letter said it would be. Mira, that letter had begun in slow, penciled loops. The house is not empty. Keep the jars on the lower shelf. Sweep towards the corners, not away. And if noon feels longer than it should, hum to the broom. Inside, chalky light, a stove the size of a stubborn horse, 2 rooms and a slanted attic where dust had webbed itself into lace. Photographs watched her from frames that nobody had dusted in a decade. In one, a girl with Myra's eyebrows held a jar as if it weighed more than water. Baba Vera in her head whispered, the way the letter had taught her, open only at dusk. Mira unpacked like she was making a pact, mug, spoon, 2 bowls, 3 books, the plant with leaves already performing a melodrama of thirst. She watered it from the pump. The water tasted like pennies and stone. She set her phone on the mantel where reception curled up and slept. Silence stepped into the room as if invited. At noon, the first oddness revealed itself. The clock over the stove, a bullseye of enamel and numbers, struck 12 and then refused to leave it. Time did not stop. It lingered. The light pressed its hands against the window panes and pushed, but did not pass. Mira stood very still, then laughed at herself for standing very still, and then stopped laughing when she felt the laugh eaten by the room, taken like bread from a hand. Button appeared first, the dog with a face like a misplaced comma. He trotted up the step and sat down in a comma shape, tail tucked precisely, tongue out as if making a polite point. He wore a collar with a name stamped on tin, Button. Behind him came Yarrow, whose boots made the porch declare the weather, whose eyes were the color of chipped glass. You're Mira, he said. So are you, she answered before her brain could protest, then flushed. I mean, yes, I am. Yarrow, he offered, with a small nod that suggested he was the sort of man who could be trusted with fence posts and secrets but preferred fence posts. Brought you eggs. And a broom. I have a broom, she said. Not this one, he said, and set it by the door. The straw was dark, as if it had been dipped in twilight. The handle bore a notch near the top, worn smooth by a thumb. Baba said. Baba said a lot, apparently. Mira held the broom the way you hold a violin for the first time, respectfully trying not to be ridiculous. What do I owe you for the eggs? A jar, he said. Later. If your first harvest takes. What do I grow? She attempted a joke. Let me guess. Artisanal solitude? Yarrow's mouth did something that might, in better light, be a smile. You'll see. He glanced at the fields as a doctor might glance at a pulse. Don't nap at noon, he added. And if you hear a knock from inside the door, don't answer. From inside. He tipped his cap at nobody in particular. Button, he told the dog, which could have meant come or stay, or we are done here. Button, wise in the ways of punctuation, understood the end of a sentence and followed. Afternoon unraveled like old twine. Mira swept toward the corners as instructed. Dust collected peacefully, and then, when pushed against the baseboards, seemed to climb them in a fine gray hush that dissolved as it rose. The broom made a soft sound, the small purling of a creek under ice. She found jars in the lower cabinet, dozens of them, squat and thick, lids with rubber gaskets, each labeled in pencil with a date and a single word: April, rain; May, prayer; August, grief. When she lifted a jar, her palm warmed as if someone beneath the glass took her hand. She set it down gently. The jar with grief skated a half-inch on the shelf of its own accord and then settled as if embarrassed to be seen doing anything at all. At dusk, she sat on the steps and watched the horizon remember how to change color. A breeze came up and found it had nothing to play with. The fields refused to ripple. Crickets did their arithmetic in the ditch. She tried to imagine planting quiet. Did you sprinkle, or bury, or simply refrain? In the city, quiet had been a thing you bought with noise-canceling headphones and a locked bathroom door. Here it might be a thing with roots. That night the house measured her. Floor sighed at her weight. The attic breathed. Mira dreamed of a red door that drank thunder. She woke to the sound of nothing, which is to say she woke in a start. Morning brought a ledger, discovered under the breadbox. Cloth-bound, penciled in a hand that pressed hard. The first page read Account of Silence, 1951, and continued, without an end date. Columns: sown, spoken, kept, sold. Entries: 20 furrows, 20 truths, 7 jars aired, 3 to counsel. In the margin a recipe: for too much, lullaby while sweeping; for not enough, bells that won't ring. Mira took the broom outside to the small strip of earth closest to the porch, where things were brave enough to grow without permission. The dirt there was blunt and brown. She pressed the broom bristles against the soil and felt a small resistance, like pushing against the surface of a pond. The broom made that creak under ice sound again. She hummed, experimentally, a tune her mother used to put dishes to sleep in the rack. The ground approved. Yarrow arrived with a sack of something that wasn't seed, but acted like it. "They're husks," he said. "We save the husks. The seed is your secret." He poured a drift of the pale hulls into her palm. They were weightless as peeled words. "I don't." She was about to say she didn't have any secrets ready, and then she felt ridiculous again. Who comes to a new life without a single thing unsaid? He showed her the proper distance between furrows, the angle of the broom when encouraging silence to take. It likes the corners. It likes thresholds. It likes the line where the field meets the road. Don't plant too close to the door. He nodded at the red door, without looking at it. Baba said. Baba said, Mira echoed, and felt a brief buoyancy at having a phrase that fit here. By late afternoon they had 20 furrows like delicate ribs along the edge of the field. Yarrow packed the husk sack under his arm and made as if to go. "Tonight," he said, "you plant. Speak true, 1 for each. Then cover with the husk. Don't explain. Explanation feeds weeds." "What do the jars keep?" she asked, cocking her head toward the cupboard, curiosity gaining on manners. He squinted at a crow tilting its head at them, as if measuring their interior volumes. "What we can't bear to lose entirely. What we can't bear to have all at once." "That's not an answer," she said, but softly, like a joke told not to make a laugh but to make a human shape in the air between them. He allowed himself the better light smile. "It's the only one you get today." Button, who understood the day had been sufficiently punctuated, wagged once like a period and followed. Twilight thickened. Mira made tea, found it tasted like a metal memory, and drank it anyway because beginnings deserve ceremony. The ledger waited open. The fields waited shut. She wrote the date in the book as if cleaving it from all other dates, and then went outside with the broom and a pocket of husks and the quiet knowledge of what needed saying. At the first furrow she crouched. "I wanted to go without telling anyone," she whispered, and the earth received it the way a kind aunt receives a child's broken toy, gently, with a plan. She covered the furrow with husks that vanished as they fell. The air thinned, then thickened, as if learning a new grammar. At the second furrow, "I keep the plant because I don't want to admit what dies under my care." The third, I was relieved when the message didn't send. The fourth, she stared at a long time. Secrets can be small and still have long roots. She kept them small tonight. There would be time for the others. Or there would not, and that too would be a harvest. When she reached the 20th furrow, she had run out of little truths and found herself at the feet of a larger one. I want to be someone different, she said, and the ground took that with an audible softening, like bread meeting butter. The stars arrived in handfuls and then in sacks. The fields held still. The jars in the cupboard clicked softly as if cooling after a long bake. In the red of the door, her own reflection looked like a stranger who had already forgiven her for something. Then the knock came from inside the door. It was not a loud sound. It was the inverse of loud. The kind of sound a hand makes when it chooses not to land. Mira did not move. The ledger's rules rose in her head like geese. Don't answer. Not from inside. The knock came again, more request than command. In the stillness of the foyer, her breath sounded impolite. She took one step back. The door warmed as if blushing. Mira, who had come to the country for a silence she could hold, understood for the first time that silence could also hold her. Not tonight, she whispered to whatever waited in the wood. Come in the morning like everything else. The door cooled. The house exhaled. Beyond the porch, the furrows released a silver thread of steam that did not steam, but listened. Somewhere in the dark, a bell thought about ringing and, mercifully, did not. Mira slept in the chair because beds felt like claims and she had only just arrived. She dreamed again, but differently, a field of jars with labels she could not read because the words were turned inward. She tried to pick one up and discovered her hands were made of broom straw. She woke with thumbs sore from clutching the handle. Morning, true morning, arrived with birds deciding to try the air again. The clock unlatched itself from noon. Mira opened the ledger and wrote, with a new gravity of hand, 20 furrows, 20 truths. She paused, then added. And the door knocked first. On the porch, someone had left a crate. Eggs, yes, and bread wrapped in waxed cloth, and something she had expected without admitting it, a single empty jar with a lid and a label already penciled. September, newcomer. She turned the jar in her hand. It warmed her palm. The fields did not rustle. But in the thin place between one breath and the next, she heard it, the faintest crisping sound, like the first page of a book turned by a careful thumb. Her crop had begun. Morning cooked slow, like porridge that refuses to hurry. Mira learned the house by temperature, the cold square by the pantry where the floor remembered a long-ago leak, the warm smudge on the red door at shoulder height, as if a hand often rested there from the other side. She began with the ledger. A count of silence, page after page like ribs. Baba Vera's pencil bit hard, aired 7 jars. Scolded Button for licking the gasket. Sold 2 to council, processional and condolence. In the margin, a crooked line of advice. Don't brag to the quiet. It bruises and remembers. Outside, the 20 furrows lay calm, their edges as neat as if stitched. The air had a tensile strength she could feel when she pushed a palm into it, as if she were testing bread dough and finding it unwilling to take fingerprints. The hush had a surface. Yarrow arrived with Button and a toolbox that clicked like good intentions. He fixed a missing bolt on the gate while not offering conversation. She liked that about him, even as she craved the sort of city talk that spilled to cover awkwardness. Here, if you spilled, the earth drank. I found a ledger, she said, because silence was fine, but secrets were for furrows. Rules about airing jars. He set the wrench down, wiped his hands on an already surrendered rag. Airing's Thursday, he said. Never Tuesday. Tuesday's for forgetting. What happens if I air on Tuesday? She asked, because somebody had to be the one to prod the electric fence. The quiet remembers being forgotten, he said. It sulks. It takes more than you offer. And the council? He gave her that better light smile straight on. It startled like a bird leaving a bush. They keep the town in balance. Weddings, funerals, winter vigils. You'll sell to them first. Baba wrote, processional and condolence. Those are flavors. Uses, he said. Think of it like spices. Some jars hold the hush that lets vows be heard without nerves. Some hold the hush that allows grief to breathe without shame. He gestured toward the fields. Different seeds make different jars, depending on what you speak. Mira thought of what she had whispered into the furrows, little truths and one large one, and felt something tug low in her chest, a fish testing a line. How do I know which jars I'll get? You don't, Yarrow said. You keep a good ledger, and the house teaches you. Button, board of metaphysics, rolled in a rectangle of sunlight, so exact it might have been measured by a carpenter. He snuffed at the base of the red door and sneezed as if dust offended his editorial standards. By afternoon, the sky assembled a polite cloud and then disassembled it. Mira practiced with the broom. Angle, drag, lift. When she hummed, bristles made that Winter Creek murmur. When she sang actual notes, something in the handle thrilled. She could feel it in the bone of her thumb where the notch rested. The broom wanted music, or perhaps it wanted breath shaped into anything but language. She swept the thresholds until the house felt like a mouth with clean teeth. She swept the corners and found small congregations of old quiet, pale and fibrous, which she gathered into a dustpan and tipped into a bucket labeled compost in Baba's hard script. She had not known you could compost hush. She poured water over it and watched it slump like tired frosting. The first jar she dared to open was last year's October storm. She waited for dusk, opened the lid a fraction, and the kitchen changed weather. Not the sound of rain, but the interval around rain. Roofs considering, cats under porches tensing, the ache in a barometer knee. Her breath fogged the glass. She closed the lid quick before the room took on puddles, and she had to mop. She aired April, rain next because it felt like kin. That one made her shoulders drop, her heartbeat slow to match Eve's. She understood the point of airing. Not to release what you kept but to teach it manners, to remind stored stillness how to live around people without smothering them. She labeled the empty jar from the crate September, newcomer, and for practice, she held it open near the porch at twilight. The jar accepted the hour like a shy guest accepts a chair. When she closed the lid, it pinged. The sound was faint, a spoon on glass in another room. She wrote in the ledger, newcomer, weak but polite. Thursday came with a mood. The clock's hands behaved themselves. Noon passed like a well-trained dog. Mira set the jars to the sideboard, a dozen lined like squat sentries. She learned gaskets, the feel of a good seal, the faint sticky kiss of rubber that says yes, now. She cracked each lid a hair's breadth and waited until the jar's breath matched the room's, then closed it before the exchange turned greedy. Midway through May, prayer, the red door warmed. Not the way wood warms in sun, the way a palm does when another palm leans. Mira stilled. She did not look at it on purpose, the way you do not look at a stray dog while you decide if it belongs to you. The warmth held, polite as a held breath at a theater curtain. She finished airing the jar. The door cooled. She wrote in the margin, door attentive during prayer. Will not be lured. Near evening, 3 figures walked the road as if they were a procession of their own making. The town council, 2 women and a man, all past 60, all wearing the kind of clothes that don't mind being leaned on. They introduced themselves in the kitchen by removing gloves and hats and making friends with the stove. I'm Adela, said the oldest woman, hair like smoke. This is Tara's and Oksana. We'll be buying your first jars if they pass the table test. What's the table test? Mira asked, setting the kettle because hospitality is the oldest spell. We set them here, Adela said, tapping the table with a ring that had known winters. We talk like people talk around a table. If the jars make us better versions of ourselves, we pay and bless them. If they make us careful with each other, we pay double. If they make us worse, she lifted a shoulder in a shrug that left space for the unspoken. We return them to the field. Mira placed April, rain, August, grief, and her shy September, newcomer on the wood. The council sat. Yarrow hovered near the doorframe like a practical saint. Button pretended to sleep, but left one ear at attention. They spoke of harvests and gutters, of the school roof that needed tar before true cold. As they talked, April, Rain made the cadence of voices soften, turned interruptions into overlaps you didn't mind. August, grief gave Oksana permission to mention her sister's name without the usual flinch. Newcomer did little, then a little more, like a child crossing a room to join a game. This one, Tara said of grief, palms around the jar as if warming them. This one will keep for the vigil. What vigil? Mira asked, not to challenge, but to map the town by its rituals. Adela's smoke hair stirred, though there was no draft. The long noon, she said. It comes some summers, some not. Last year it did. We stood with the animals under trees and remembered how to breathe. Your aunt gave us hush that didn't let the fear spread like spilled oil. Mira felt the old clock in her own ribs hesitate. What is the long noon? Yarrow rubbed his jaw, as if smoothing a thought. When noon forgets how to finish, he said. The towns on the other side of the hills say, it doesn't happen. That's fine. They have their owls talking afternoons, their saints with headaches. We have this. Oksana set her palm flat on Newcomer, as if measuring its height. It's a good start, she said. We'll take 2 jars today. Rain and grief. The Newcomer stays with you. It needs a home voice. Mira wrote numbers in the ledger with a carefulness she hoped would please the dead. She took the coins, old ones and new ones mixed, and felt a peculiar relief she hadn't expected. Not that she had money now, but that she had entered the arithmetic of the place. She was part of the fraction. After they left, the house felt both emptier and heavier, as if conversation had a weight that the floorboards were built to hold. Dusk slouched in. She swept the thresholds, hummed the dish lullaby, and thought of her city plant stubbornly, not dying on the mantel. It had perked up, traitorously, as if the quiet suited it. She carried the broom to the field's edge to check the furrows. The 20 lines had tufted, not with blades but with a pale nap, like the first beard on a boy who will always look younger than his age. When she held her ear low, she heard it, the tiniest fricatives, consonants practicing. Her secrets were sprouting as syllables. That night the knock came from inside the red door again, paired with a new sound from the attic, the hush of something being set down gently and then thought better of. Mira considered pretending she hadn't heard. Pretend is a city skill. But Baba Vera's pencil voice threaded through her mind. If noon feels longer, hum to the broom. If the door knocks from inside, fortify the lintel and do not discuss it alone. Yarrow, she said into the night, as if he were a telephone she could dial by speaking his name. It felt childish and worked about as well as childhood often does. There was no answer, and she felt better anyway. In the morning she climbed to the attic with the broom like a pilgrim climbing a mountain with a staff. The attic smelled of dry books and sleep. In the rafters, a line of wind chimes hung. Bone-white clay, little squares stamped with barley heads, and not one of them moved though the window was open and the day had the manners of a breeze. Bells that won't ring, she said, pleased to see the rules made into shapes. She reached out. The chimes flicked away from her fingers. Not moved by wind, moved by a preference. At the far end of the attic, under a sheet, something angular. She pulled the cloth and found a cradle. It was small and ordinary, painted a hopeful blue worn to the wood at the edges. In the cradle, a jar lay on its side, unlabeled. The lid was sealed with old wax that had cracked. Mira lifted it carefully, feeling suddenly as if she were handling a borrowed name. When she set it back, the cradle rocked once of its own accord and then stopped with the stern dignity of old furniture. She replaced the sheet as if covering a sleeping child back to its chin. Downstairs, the day went about its chores on cat feet. She practiced a new sweep, diagonal, a slow figure 8, and hummed scales under her breath. When her tune drifted careless toward melody, the house felt peevish. When she kept it simple as breath warmed into sound, the floorboards all but purred. She wrote letters she did not plan to send. To her mother, to the apartment she had left, to the person she had almost been if she had stayed. She told them the truth, which she had learned now was seed. Then she burned the letters in the stove because some seeds are weeds if left where they can reseed. At midday, the clock swung toward 12 with a virtue Mira appreciated. She made soup. Button, who had wholly adopted the kitchen, arranged himself where a dog might reasonably expect accidental carrots. Yarrow came by to check the fence line and accepted soup as if it were a wage. "Tell me what can't be said," she asked him while they leaned on the porch rail, Bowles warming fingers. He looked out at the fields the way a man looks at a river he's crossed enough to know where it takes lives. "We don't talk about years when the silence runs wild," he said. "We don't say names near jars unless we mean to keep the person tender. We don't whistle after dark." "Why not whistle?" "It mistakes it for a call." "What does?" He took his time. "What you grow," he said finally. "What Baba grew. What's always been here. Call it quiet, call it hush, call it the space around words where truth can stand upright without wobbling. It likes to be fed and told it's not hungry. If you whistle after dark, it comes to the door and asks to be invited in like a good story. Once in, it gets in the habit. And the habit is bad." "The habit means you stop hearing other habits," he said. "Birds. Friends. Your own foolishness, which is often the only thing that saves you." He scraped the last onion from his bowl with a piece of bread and ate both. "Also, it steals spoons." She laughed, relieved like a child when the teacher makes a joke and the hard thing she's learning turns warm for a moment. "Not the spoons. You'll count them tonight," he said. "You'll think I'm teasing. Then you'll count again." He left with Button, who took his afternoon sentence seriously. Mira counted the spoons. 6. She set them in a row, turned her back, swept the room, turned again. 5. She searched the drawers, the sink, the mantel. The missing spoon lay under the red door, as if it had decided it lived there now. When she reached to take it, the wood pleasantly hot under her fingers, the spoon slid a polite inch deeper. "Please," she said to the door, as one might speak to a temperamental cat. "We share." The spoon returned the inch, like a loan paid. At dusk the furrows exhaled a little fog, and then thought better of spectacle. A blackbird landed on the scarecrow's shoulder, and did not sing. Mira set the jars for the night air, just a crack, lessons in and out, and sat with the broom across her knees like a friend who needed holding. Her phone on the mantel blinked itself awake and then gave up. No reception, only the old texts waiting like fruit flies you can't catch. She turned it face down and watched the dark gather. The knock came. Not the door this time. From the attic, 3 steady raps, as if a parent requested a child's attention without scolding. Mira stood under the hatch and put her hand to the string that would pull it down. She did not pull. She felt the broom vibrate lightly against her palms, as if it could hum without her. "Not alone," Baba's penciled voice advised. "Tomorrow," she said to the ceiling. "Bring it tomorrow." The raps ceased. A clay chime up there clicked once in approval or annoyance. They sound the same when spoken by clay. She dreamed she was sweeping the path to the well, and the broom was leaving not lines but letters, and when she bent to read them they were not in any alphabet she knew, but she knew what they said. "Do not try to love the quiet more than it loves you. It holds a longer grudge." In the morning, the town arrived in 2s and 3s because word travels faster where there aren't other things to chase. They brought questions tucked in quilts and reasons in jars of plum jam. They wanted to see the newcomer, the girl with the city plant, the broom with the notch, the field that didn't rustle. Mira brewed tea until the kettle developed opinions. She told them she was learning. She let them put palms on the jars. She did not let them near the attic string. The council sent a note with Oksana's tidy initials. Processional requested for Sunday. 4 jars if possible. 4. Mira said aloud. The field answered with a soft rattle of syllables. Secrets work quick in a hungry place. That afternoon, Yarrow taught her the procession not to tie around a jar's neck, silk ribbon the color of wheat under lightning, looped so the knot could be pulled in a hurry and never tangle. He tied it with one hand. She tried and made a respectable sailor's mess. He untied it without smirking, which is a gentleman's smirk. "Why the knot?" she asked. "In case the hush takes ambition," he said. "You want to open it clean as a bell strike, then close fast." "Bells don't ring," she said, thinking of the attic. "They do if you don't ask them to," he said. "They ring to themselves. On Sunday, The procession walked the main road, bride and groom with cheeks that believed in peaches, children with shoelaces that believed in mud, elders with spines like good gates. Mira carried April, Rain at her hip. Yarrow carried processional from Baba's older shelf, a jar that felt like the absence of interruption. Oksana carried Blessing. Mira hadn't made that one. Someone else had. The jars made a path wider than the road. At the moment of vase, a wind rose and went around them without touching the edges. The couple spoke. Everyone heard. The words didn't feel fragile. They felt planted. Mira looked down the line of faces and saw what Baba must have seen 1,000 Sundays, how people tilt toward whatever lets them be brave. After, as the town unspooled into cake and gossip, Taras pressed coins into Myra's jar hand and said, with the authority of someone who had outlived 3 roofs, "You're keeping it steady." Steady lasted until late afternoon. Then the clock stuttered at 12 and thought for a while about staying. The light pushed against the window and pushed again. Button whined, low. Somewhere in the field, the nap of the furrows lay down flatter as if waiting its turn. Mira took the broom to the porch and hummed, breath shaped into nothing you could sing along to. The broom answered with its Winter Creek murmur. The clock ticked, considered the arrogance of being a clock, and resumed. Noon let go. She wrote in a ledger. Long Noon tested the door. Hummed it away. She added because it felt like a sacrament to tell the truth somewhere, and I wanted it. The wanting startled her. She wanted the long noon the way you want a bath that could swallow you, a bed you could sleep in until your old lives iced over. She wanted not to have to say what she meant or mismean what she said. She wanted the kind of quiet that doesn't only hold, it absolves. She closed the ledger before the page could carry more of that wanting into the record. Night came with its habit of pause. The attic did not knock. The door did not warm. The chimes considered their own silence and found it sufficient. Mira slept with the broom across the threshold like a dog. In the pale before morning, a sound woke her. Not the knock, not the attic's polite raps. A small tink like a spoon in a glass. She went to the cupboard. One jar had unsealed itself. September, newcomer, lid askew, gasket damp. The air around it had the tender awkwardness of a first day somewhere you hope to belong. Mira tightened the lid gently, as one tightens a child's scarf. She set it back. On the shelf below, something had changed. A space that had not been there waited like an absence you only notice once it's tidy. She put her hand into the space and found, behind the lip of the shelf, another jar pushed deep into the shadow. Unlabeled. Warm. She drew it out. As she held it, her ears filled as if she had ducked underwater. The room wavered. From inside the glass came a sound that wasn't a sound but an agreement. We won't say. She set the jar down. The red door warmed, just a whisper. The clock, well behaved, moved toward 7. Mira breathed and counted the spoons. 6. She laughed a small laugh and let the house have it. It took the laugh like bread from a hand. Autumn arrived like a hush that had finally learned melody. The fields shimmered in their muted way, no gold, no green, but a color you could only call pause. The hush had grown thick enough to see, a trembling at the edge of air, a shimmer where wind should be. Mira stood at the porch with her broom and the red door at her back, listening to a sound that wasn't sound but something closer to agreement. The harvest was due. She had learned the rhythm by now. Hum before dawn, sweep the furrows at the half-light, unseal the jars at dusk. The ledger was heavy with months of pencil and consequence. Pages smelled of graphite and rain. Account of silence, it still said, but Mira had begun to understand that it was also an account of herself. Every line an admission. Every jar a truth. Yarrow stood in the field's edge, his coat drawn tight, Button doing his usual punctuation at his feet. It's time, he said, voice half swallowed by the hush. If we leave it too long, it'll seed itself. What happens if it does? Mira asked. He glanced at the horizon, where noon sometimes lingered longer than reason. Then the quiet grows in people instead of ground. They began the harvest. The scythes were dull by design. Sharp ones offended the crop. Each swing released small, soft sighs that brushed their cheeks like moth wings. Mira gathered the fallen quiet into armfuls that looked like pale smoke and carried them to the porch, where the jars waited open. The air thickened as she worked, until even breathing required intention. The town came to help: Adela, Tara's, Oksana, a handful of children with curiosity too large to contain. They wore mufflers not for cold but for modesty, as though sound itself might overhear and take offense. One by one they filled the jars, sealed them, labeled them. October, remembrance; November, repair; December, rest. When dusk settled, Mira found herself alone in the field. The last furrow still glimmered faintly, refusing to close. She knelt and placed her hand on it. Beneath her palm, a pulse. The hush there wasn't ready to be taken. It waited for something unspoken. She realized then what it wanted, what she hadn't yet offered. Her truest confession. The words trembled against her teeth, reluctant, private. "I thought leaving would make me someone else," she whispered. "But I'm still every version of me that ran away." The ground accepted this, without judgment. The shimmer dulled. The last of the silence rose like breath and drifted into the jar waiting by her knee. When she sealed it, the lid sang a note, a single, perfect C that lingered like forgiveness. Yarrow found her an hour later, dirt-streaked and bright-eyed. "You did it," he said softly. She nodded. "It did me, I think." They stacked the jars on the porch. The council would come tomorrow for the market of Hush, to weigh and bless and bargain. But for now, Mira wanted no company but the broom and the stars. She took her seat by the red door. Its paint had dulled through seasons of holding its breath. "You've been patient," she told it. "What did you want all this time?" From within came a faint sigh, the same one she'd heard on her first night, softer now, tired but kind. The door unlatched itself, just enough for a thread of air to cross the threshold. Mira expected chill, but what entered was warmth, the temperature of a hand meeting another in understanding. Baba Vera's voice came as a whisper through the wood, neither ghost nor memory, just truth given shape. "Keep what you can, child. Let the rest go." Mira smiled. "That's the plan." She closed the latch gently. The silence around her no longer pressed, it accompanied. Crickets resumed their arithmetic. The scarecrow, faithful sentinel, leaned as if satisfied. The air hummed faintly, the way breath does when it's been held too long and finally released. She opened the last page of the ledger and wrote, "Harvest complete. Jars full. Noon behaved. Broom content. And I am not someone different, only quieter in the right places." The red door cooled. The stars came forward like words written on fresh paper. From somewhere deep in the field, a single bell, one of the attic chimes, rang for the first and only time. The note carried, thin and steady, across the harvested hush and through the town below. It was enough sound to last the whole winter.